Well, a very good afternoon to you, one and all. Happy lunchtime. Hope you're all safe and well. So, obviously, the Lopetegui Caduce fracas is still sort of raging on a little bit in terms of news and things coming out. But as always, every so often we do a Russie reacts or a Holly reacts or an Anton reacts, where we take a topic and listen to your comments and go through them. And as I said, we watch and we read rather every comment you guys send through. So we've been collating them when it comes to talking about this subject. So I thought we'll get into it and have a bit of a chat and go through some of your comments because obviously you hear from me, Holly, Alex, and Anton on the YouTube channel. But unless you necessarily read the comments, you don't know what other people are thinking. So let's get into it. And also, it's worth saying that we'll have the Julien Lopetegui press conference sort of debrief later on today, as well as Hammers Headlines. And hopefully, we'll have a preview with a Ipswich fan on the channel in preparation for Saturday's game. Anyway, so we've taken comments from the last 3 or 4 videos we've covered this topic, and there is a mixture of opinion. That's a fair assessment of it. I mean, Van Confico said it's like the coach doesn't want to get the best out of him. I think he should move in the next transfer window. Now we do know that there is a likelihood that he will be leaving in the summer. He was pictured at the Arsenal game, wasn't he? Watching Arsenal day before yesterday, and famously Calafiore was pictured at the Arsenal game before signing for Arsenal. But obviously, Caduce's transfer release clause comes back into effect in the summer, so there's going to be a host side. So I think realistically, unless we do something dramatic like win a cup, or we've only got one cup to win now potentially, or get into the Champions League or into the Europa League, then I think we're going to be in a difficult position. I think, we know that could be the case, and hence why the signing of Luis Guilherme was so important in my eyes, because for me, that is not a like-for-like replacement, but a replacement for that position. And I have no doubt he'll probably get someone like Arsenal or Liverpool and absolutely tear it up. It's sod's law. But I don't think it's a case of him I don't think Lopetegui wants to get the worst out of him, because why would he do that? Because his job's on the line. I think it's almost like, for me, he's putting a square peg in a round hole, whether it's the other way around. That's what he's trying to do. Now, I don't see why he needs to do that now, unless he's trying to appease everyone. But then with some of his substitutions, I don't think he's trying to appease anyone, to be honest. Very much showing it's his way or the highway. But thank you, Van Conifco. Iron Wolf 84. I'm glad that the situation has been blown out of proportion. And Kudus have cleared the air. We need a united dressing room and unity on the pitch. It's good to hear that both parties have moved on. I do hope also that whoever leaked this incident is found and removed from the club before they are selling stories designed to undermine the club and maybe the manager. I mean, this to me, it does give shed light on the whole ITK thing. Now, what was interesting, again, playing devil's advocate a little bit. Anyone who was watching a illegal stream of the game, which was commentated by Tony Gale, he paid reference. He said, "Oh, Kudus, maybe there's been a bust up in the changing room." So, and I don't know whether Tony had any information or Tony was just 2 and 2 together, but that really sort of started the rumour a little bit. Now, clearly, there is a leak in the team. Whether it's in the team, whether it's in the staff, where there is a leak somewhere, and I think that leak's been there for a while, to be honest. So and unfortunately, it's the nature of social media. It's another conversation to be had about social media and getting clicks. And I know we do it. Every other channel do it, where we cover stories based on things that have been published, whether it's on podcasts, whether it's on newspaper sites, rumors, all that type of thing. So I think it's something which happens all the time. Players and managers alike, head coaches have fallings out. It's a very heated world, particularly match days as well. So it doesn't surprise me this has happened lots of times. I mean, we've had loads of. I mean, don't forget John Hartson kicked Eyal Berkovic in the head and it was only there. We'd have only known about that because the sun was there in a pre-social media sort of world, really. So, yeah, I totally agree, and I'm glad. I mean, it was. I think it was done and dusted, pretty sharpish by the sounds of it. From according to my source, it was it all cleared the air and it was all sorted, and it was very sort of handled professionally. And the best thing we can do is just play Kudus on Saturday. Probably, ideally, play him in the 10, and see what happens. Or we'll see if he puts him on the left. Does he have a sulk? We'll see. Next up, we've got Artel. Hope you're well. Team J-Lo needs to coach and better convey the playing philosophy and tactics of the strikers in midfield. They'd stop playing like individuals. Also, all internal crap at all levels needs to be kept in-house, not leaked. Yeah, I mean, the second point we've obviously already touched, and I think, to be honest, there's going to be, if we're all interested in stuff, there's going to be a market for it. So there is a market for ITK news and stuff like that. People are interested. People want to know. They want to know what's going on. It's always been a thirst for gossip, whether it's at football or celebrity gossip, or even just the neighbours twitching the curtains next door. There's always a fascination with finding out something which you shouldn't find out. I think the first point about J-Lo and the philosophy, I think that it's something which I've mentioned. I think it's fair enough. I haven't seen the J-Lo ball yet. I haven't seen Loppy ball to really get behind. I've seen glimpses, I think. Defensively, I think we're starting to turn a corner. He says, having just conceded, Chelsea, Liverpool was 8 goals conceded. For me, you're right. It is the next step. Is that I think the midfield is the area we need to sort out the most. I think the forward line will fall in line once we've sorted the midfield out. Because if you're then playing Paqueta as an 8 alongside an Alvarez, for example, obviously Alvarez will be back into the side, I'd imagine, having come back from suspension for the Ipswich game. And then does that mean you could put Kudus into the 10 and then Bowen on the right and then Somerville on the left? By the sounds of it, probably will be Antonio up front. Because obviously, as we sort of mentioned a few weeks ago, the prognosis of Füllkrug was he wasn't going to be back until the Tottenham game anyway. So I don't know why it's another news story again. And that's the issue when there's no slow news. When it's a slow news story, the rumours and they get ramped up, don't they? Particularly like over the summer, for example. Next, we've got one from Danny Oivid. 8139, obviously 8138 was taken. The best thing that could have happened was Kudus being subbed. Every individual player needs to know at the back of the mind if it's not okay to perform there at the best. Do you know what? That's what I've been saying. I don't, and it's not gaslighting. It's none of that shit. Just my own opinion is. I mean, the end of that game on Saturday, Bowen, Paqueta, and Kudus weren't on the pitch at the end of the game. And some people think that's crazy. It's crazy. They're best players, but he should be playing. But if they're not playing, if they're not playing well, they should be taken off. And if they're not playing well because of the factor of the tactics, that's a different story. And that probably was the case with particularly Kudus. He was playing on the left. But I mean, Kudus hasn't scored in the last 7 or 8 Premier League games. Granted, he hasn't played in the right position, but still, Sam Antonio hasn't scored in the last 7 or 8 games. Doesn't really look like scoring in the last 7 or 8 games. Bowen hasn't really been hit final cylinders. Paqueta hasn't really been firing all the cylinders. Is that too much of a coincidence that the tactics are wrong at the moment? Possibly. But I think this is great. I totally agree, Danny. I think no person should be guaranteed a starting spot. No person should be guaranteed to not be subbed if they're not playing well. And one of the things we criticised David Moyes was a lack of utilising the squad. As I said, I think Alex has made the point. I made the point a couple of days ago. He's used every sub option. 30 subs he's used in 6 games, which shows me that he's utilising a squad. Flip side is people go, he doesn't know what he's doing and he's tinkering, quite possibly. But but there's always a yin to a yang, unfortunately. Thank you, Danny. And you can look at me, it looks like I'm peering over the wall. The problem isn't subbing him off. Kudus was played in the World Cup and scored 2 goals, yet he was subbed off before 65 and never got angry. The problem was the coach coming out to the media and singling Kudus out. What happened to we as a team? Now, what's interesting, take a look, he was also missing chances. It happens to Darwin Núñez. The players get scolded, get told in the media, but their coaches don't come out and say things like that to destroy image. They are one thing that says from a to coach in the league, like Galatasaray, likes of Pep's all scold their players. So if I was Kudus and the coach said this to the media and about me while others players are not performing and I was playing a position, I have a big problem with you with the coach. I get that totally, bro. Get that. I at the end of the day, I mean, he didn't. By name, he didn't single out. He did say that it was due to he thought the team would work better. That you could paraphrase as saying that Kudus is in it for himself. But in the same way, one thing I do admire about Lopetegui is he puts his hands up and says, "I'm sorry. Sometimes got it wrong," and I like that honesty. But it's only really worth it if then they make the change. He makes changes to it for the next game. But I totally get it. But actually, players should be accountable. If they're not playing well, they should be singled out, in my opinion. But if they're in the right position, granted. Part of the reason why Greece probably isn't been as effective is because he's stuck out on the left. I hark back to Paqueta. Maybe Paqueta was put out on the left during towards the end of the David Moyes tenure, and still performed to some degree. Maybe not to how effective he was when he plays in the middle. But we don't really need that now. Do you know what I mean? We don't need that. My opinion, I don't like Lopetegui. I think he'll be foolish playing Kudus all season, and most of a bust up where there was better. I know the club are always going to side with the player because they know he's the best player in the club, the turmoil created, and the more Kudus stuck it on, the better. Yeah, fair enough, Damien. As always, I know your opinions very well, more than others maybe. I agreed. I understood the reasoning why he would play Kudus on the left side while he was getting confident putting Somerville in the side. Now he's got Somerville there who seems to have performed both all the times he's played now. I think some of it, that's his role. And whether he is trying, and for me, he's trying to appease. Maybe probably I don't know. I just don't know. I'm speculating. I shouldn't speculate. I think there's always been an issue with having a squad's great, but it takes a good head coach, a good manager to utilise that. And I'm sure there's big personalities in that room. If you play Paqueta as a 10, if Kudus as a 10, do you have to play Paqueta as an 8? If you put Paqueta on the bench, how will he respond to that? Hopefully, respond positively, but sometimes players throw their toys out. Don't forget, even some of the most professional players we've got, Fabianski threw his toys out the pram when he was replaced by Areola as the Premier League goalkeeper. Antonio has thrown his toys out the pram despite saying he wanted first team competition when he got it in Skamaka. He said, "I want to leave." So I think the difference now is the way the club is set up. It's easier to replace a head coach as it is easier than it is to replace a manager. But both people are, Stidham was involved in bringing Kudus in, but also Stidham was involved in bringing Lopetegui in. So, yes, he's the best player. He's on form the best player at the club. And, as you said, £100 million player. He'll go for 85 is his minimum release clause. And I think turmoil, I think people, a lot of this is handbags, a lot of this is just stuff said. And if you're watching the documentaries, like, I don't know, like, the Man City one, the Arsenal one, people having tear-ups in the dressing rooms all the time. And if you speak to ex-players, they have tear-ups all the time when they were playing for West Ham or other clubs. West Ham probably had the most rubbish spread by ITK frauds than any other club in the world. I do think we live in a bubble at West Ham. Where obviously the only thing we see is West Ham related, usually on Twitter or X and YouTube and TikTok and stuff like that, and Instagram. I'm sure there's similar people in other organisations within other companies, other clubs. But it does seem. I think we've got a few wind-up merchants as well. I also think we've got people in there who are deliberately put out false stories as well. or try and make things go viral by saying something's been leaked, this person, and and you could always hide behind sources, say that type of thing. But when we do news stories, it's things that have been published, whether it's been published um, on newspaper sites, or they've been published in you know uh, Spanish national sites like Vijas, and stuff like that. And I think what I don't agree is when people just sort of make stuff up, and I think in some occasions they have. Um, or they've exaggerated it. So this whole thing has been exaggerated. This whole debate we've been talking about for the last 15 minutes has been exaggerated by social media. And it's a bad thing, I think. Artel, I've avoided that one. Sorry, Artel. Yeah, avoid that one. Yeah, it's the same thing. So it was another comment. You did a very similar comment before, but I agree in terms of philosophy. Asylum 1977. Flopategui is a cancer that is going to destroy us, and no one wanted him 2 months into the season. There's been no change, no improvement. The tactics have been farcical. The team selection a joke. The performances have been pathetic. He's out Moyes. He's Moyes 2.0, the Spanish edition. 2 months, he still doesn't know what he's doing, and now he's causing problems in the dressing room. Flopategui has to go, and go now. Right, well, you're not going to go now, is it? Let's be honest. Cause problems in the dressing room. I guarantee under Moyes there was problems in the dressing room. Under Bilic there was problems in the dressing room. Pellegrini, Lampard, Redknapp, Pardew. God, we know there was incidents with them. We know there were problems in the dressing room with Pardew reign, and so it's the same with every. Football's a heated world, and lots of egos and stuff like that. In terms of a cancer, I don't like that word. I don't, and that's why I put this on, because I don't agree with things like that. It might not be your cup of tea, fair enough, but to say cancer, I don't agree with that. I think that's a step for it, and I don't agree when people do things like that, because it's your opinion, but that's nasty. In terms of the other thing, tactics, yeah, I mean, tactics of farcical. I still think you're right. I think 2 months in, I think he's still trying to figure out his right formation, his right setup, his all that type of stuff. I totally agree with that. No change. I mean, there hasn't. I mean, you could look at like for like. I think we're a bit more solid away from home than we were last year. Not a little bit more at home. I want to see a bit more flamboyance. And maybe we might see it from Ipswich onwards. The thing is, we're probably, knowing us, we'll have a really good game on Saturday, and then we've got 2 weeks, 2 match games for the old. Do we play Spurs because the international break? So, but I don't agree with the first point. The other, I think valid, but that first point, no. Caduceus has every right to be angry. So should Somerville be. Anyone who can play as a 10 has a right to be fuming. See Souček play as a 10. Lopetegui's on borrowed time, and that the time is going go a lot shorter if he keeps playing players out of position and winding them up. Again, the winding up, I think we've spoken about that. I think Somerville has a right to be just as angry as Caduce. When he's been out, when he's playing well, and then being put, and someone else who's not as good, I think naturally on the left hand side as him is being put in. The Souček one is an interesting one. As I said, I've leapt to defence of Souček a little bit recently, because he has, to all his faults, he does put 100% in there, unlike a lot of other players who I don't think have been performing at their peak, or trying to perform at their peak. He got us out of jail against Brentford, and he always gets, and that's why managers like him, not just Lopetegui. Obviously, Moyes, very much one of his stalwarts. He's the Czech Republic captain. He always is a bit of a thorn in most teams' side. Now, personally, I would like to see someone like Andy Irvine given that role, because I think he's got the height, he's got the physicality, but he's more of a creative player. I'd like to see that. On borrowed time, I think every manager's on borrowed time. I agree. And as if the results don't go one way, then that borrowed time becomes shorter and shorter. Sometimes a bust up is a good thing. Both parties know the score and compromise can be a treat. I agree. Clear. Sometimes when you have a fight with your wife or whatever, you have a row, just gets everything out in the open and you can start afresh. But that only really works if you then make a step change for the game against Ipswich. Mark, prefer what happens, and he said stays as there take place in the heat of the moment. It's not helpful for the club. You're right, and things are said. I mean, how many times do you have a row with someone and you say something you don't mean to say, it just comes out, and actually in hindsight you reflect, you calm down, and it's different, and you realise that you've overstepped the mark or anything like that. I totally agree. I think it's not all right, but it's good to know that stuff. For me, that shows that Caduce cares. It shows also that you know, when there's been a heated debate, it shows that both parties are passionate about doing the right thing, or doing what they think's right. I agree. I mean, to be honest, a lot of the stuff doesn't get a lot of the stuff. I think personally, because it was such a strange substitution. That's why it got out, because I guarantee people would have contacted people involved inside the club probably Saturday afternoon onwards, going, "What was that all about?" Particularly with Tony Gale saying in the commentary that it was maybe they've had a bust up. That put the sort of seeds of doubt, and people have probably started contacting their sources to see if it was. If it was like, oh yeah, clearly he's put a tactical thing, Caduce wasn't playing well, and then you wouldn't have had the witch hunt to find out what happened, and that's what it was. It was a witch hunt in my eyes. Alan, hope you're well, my friend, all the way from Australia. That wasn't even Australian. That was or Austrian. Put another shrimp on that barbie. I take most of the crap going on with a grain of salt. Unfortunately, the media jumps onto anything anti-West Ham so they can keep the fans divided with the Moyes in crowd. Wants it to be true to prove they get rid of their hero was the wrong thing to do. I mean, to be honest, I think it was always a case that I think it was getting stale, wasn't it? I think it needed a refresh. The squad, I think more than anything, because the squad needed a refresh, it was the right time to have a coaching staff refresh. Because if you then built another squad again under David Moyes, and then it didn't work, and you brought someone in a year, 2 years later, then again they're inheriting a David Moyes squad, and then there's a period of rebalance needed. It needed a proper like to cut the umbilical cord. I think a little bit with that. We've got a director of football in. We've got Tim Styden in, and the idea is he's the one who looks after the full footballing operations from a recruitment perspective. And it wasn't working under David Moyes, where he could veto. So it was no surprise that we literally brought in players that we were linked with last year, and Moyes said no to, because they're the players Tim wanted, and so it would never work. And David didn't want to work under that situation either. He wouldn't. He's a manager. He's an old school manager, so it's a step back in responsibilities. You may well see him in a dugout again, for Crystal Palace soon, I'd imagine, because if Glasner doesn't start getting results soon, he's going to be out his ear, and I wouldn't be surprised if Moyes would be someone who they would look to come in and firefight. But yeah, I agree. I take everything for a pinch of salt, really, because it depends. It depends who talks about it, who leaks it out, the narrative, who their friends are. It's like particularly when you've had a spate of ex-players come out and sort of criticise Lopetegui and stuff like that. You have to see who those players are, and are they happy with the board or not happy with the board, or do they work for the club, not work for the club? Everything needs to be taken with a grain of salt. But thank you for your comment, Alan. And lastly, Bill Clark. I don't believe there's a problem in the way the players are directing the narrative. Lopetegui made a tactical decision. Caduce is mentally a winner and doesn't appreciate his teammates being so passive. His dribbles are ending nowhere, no one layoff too. Totally agree. No win is the situation. Lopetegui's a head coach. It's head coach, not manager. Well done, Bill. Caduce is a key player. Another make the final decision who goes on top. Presumably he does, and Mobile remediates. I totally agree. That to me, that is my take on it. I think Lopetegui made a tactical decision. Kudus, you know, is is available to be substituted, same as everyone else. He was obviously frustrated because maybe he thought that the teammates around him were. It is true. He was a lot of ball, runs into trouble, and there's no one there to help him out, and he's taking it on himself, and it's frustration, and it must be frustration as being sort of the fall guy. But as I said, the fact is, if Paqueta and Bowen were on the end towards the end and still there, then I think even more of an axe to grind. But the fact was, they were all off the pitch, and Antonio as well, wasn't he as well? So literally, the complete forward line was off. And you're right. There's no winners in the situation. The only winners are us if Lopetegui makes it. If this has cleared the air and a discussion about Kudus is saying, look, I need to be playing as a 10 or even as a false 9 or a 10 or a right wing, not on the left. We could be the winner in that. But I agree. It's a spat between two employees of Tim Steinden's. So that's it, and there would be mediation, and just the same as if I was at work and I had a row with my line manager, it would be dealt with by my boss's boss. Do you know what I mean? And it's the same thing, really. But anyway, thank you very much for your time as per usual. If you like what we do, don't forget to give it a like, comment, and share. Don't forget, channel members, you had your opportunity to have an intimate evening with Sebastian Schemmel last night as part of your membership program. It was a really good chat, actually, Anton and Seb. It's available for the members on replay within your YouTube stuff. You can go back and watch it. It's about an hour long, 45 minutes long, and really good. And Seb's really honest, as he always is. Talks about the current situation. Talks a lot about David Moyes as well, and talks about, obviously, why Joe Cole's dogs were so fat. Brilliant question, West Ham faithful. Well done. I'm glad you're watching and you pay attention. Anyway, take care, stay safe, stay warm, stay humble, keep the faith. It's